Cameroon's Employers Association consults with the Prime Minister, head of government, on how to absorb the shocks imposed on the business community by the COVID-19 pandemic. The use, misuse and abuse of social media networks comes under scrutiny as the 7:30 News shines a spotlight on the observe and reverse of the social media and its use in Cameroon today. An unprecedented vaccine scare grips parents in Cameroon as the Ministry of Public Health announces a nationwide project to immunize young girls of 9 years and above against the cancer of the cervix come September 2020. Those are our lead stories. Hello, I am Benn, MENO PUFONG, and this is the 7:30 News live from Yaoundé.
Each of us must comply with the measures that have been taken.
You're welcome once again. Cameroon's Prime Minister has been consulting with the country's Employers Association, GICAM, on the impact of the COVID-19, of the country's current tax policy on the business community within a context marked by the coronavirus. The consultation that held through video conferencing came amidst growing complaints from the business class about their difficulty in coping with the ongoing situation imposed by the coronavirus. Star Building correspondent Christian Che Atam reports that the meeting was attended by the Ministers of Finance, Economy, and their counterpart of Trade.
This meeting is the fulfillment of a promise made by the Prime Minister. Joseph John Guti had told the head of the Employers Union of Cameroon, Celestin Tawamba, that he was going to organize a meeting to discuss the taxation policy during the COVID-19 pandemic. This came after complaints from the Employers Union that the business community is not comfortable with the taxation policy in place. During the online session, Prime Minister Joseph John Guti, assisted by the Minister of Finance, Louis-Paul Motaze, the Minister of the Economy, Alamin Ousmane Mey, and the Minister of Trade, Luc Magloire Mbarga Atangana, listened patiently to the complaints of the GICAM head. Celestin Tawamba said even after the easing measures adopted by the state, businesses in the country are still feeling the full weight of the current pandemic. He complained that they record an annual loss of 3,119 billion and have suspended over 53,000 jobs. The head of the Employers Union pleaded for a more supple taxation approach, which, according to him, is the best way to help relaunch the economy after the pandemic. In response, the different ministers presented the strategies which government has put in place to improve the attractiveness of the Cameroonian economy. At the end of the session, Prime Minister Joseph John Guti instructed the Minister of Finance and his colleagues to study the proposals of GICAM and make recommendations on additional measures which could be envisaged to further ease the strain of the pandemic on Cameroonian businesses.
Activities are unfolding unperturbed at the Yaoundé Central Treasury in spite of last Friday's fire accident that consumed the computer terminal of the structure. While investigations continue to determine the actual cause of the fire outbreak, government is assuring the public that the Central Treasury will continue rendering services without any interruptions. Luma Slim Davis reports on how service resumed at the structure after the weekend fire accident.
The fire incident at the National Treasury continues to be a topic for general discussion and concern. The then users continue to be served without difficulty, and the fear in many over the incident is gradually fading out.
Those who used to cash their salary through bank account can have their salaries. Those who used to cash their salary through pay vouchers They are having their salary as from 9 o'clock. The Minister of Finance took a very good decision to put things in place before Monday.
The usual queues and bustling at the Treasury were noticed Monday, July 27.
Accounting services which are out of Yaoundé are also there to take money to go and be paying people there in such a way that the public service should not be stopped.
Work started and has been going on normally as in the routine as what we've been doing here.
As appropriate measures have been taken to replace damaged equipment to guarantee normal functioning, there is no cause for panic.
Our news dossier this Monday night explores the use, misuse and abuse of the social media in Cameroon today, and more or less like and even worse than WikiLeaks. The social media networks now publish information, particularly classified information, even before they reach their intended destinations and their recipients. Clarice Array-Takon talked with some experts on the ethical and judicial implications of social media misuse and reports that it's high time the law on cybercriminality went fully into force.
Confidentiality and social media. The two have never been so far apart. Appointment decisions still unofficial, or correspondence between administrations or individuals for their eyes and ears only, which end up being for the wider public. Ethics and social media are yet to be on friendly terms.
Talking about social media and ethics is very difficult because there's not organization which are regulating social media's activities. Activities are almost free. People are not responsible on what they're publishing. Those who are publishing users, they are declaring identities which are not always the real identities. The information which is foreign information has to be published following specific channels.
The law on cybercriminality in Cameroon makes judicial implications clear.
If you share the information, if you are a public service agent, you can be, you have an imprisonment from 6 to 2 years. If you are not a public agent and only the man who receive in his phone the information and share it is 6 months to 2 years of prison when you use social media. You are not anonymous.
IT experts say the law always takes its course for those found guilty of removing, destroying, copying or transmitting confidential or public documents without authorization.
Be it as it may, communication and IT specialists agree on one thing, that the social media misuse and abuse is a global phenomenon capable of bringing down political systems. Constantine Baum captured their views and opinions on why they search in abuse and misuse and how they can be contained and combat. The following report.
Administrators know that protecting the confidentiality of information or documents used in policy making and administration is a top priority. But of recent, the social media has destroyed the machinery used to keep the confidentiality, and information is regularly disclosed to the public unauthorized.
Stretching some aspects of the law which are aimed at combating this phenomenon.
Proper training can reduce such leakages.
They were not trained enough morally and ethically so as to be able to face the social pressure, appointing people who have in the mindset, a kind of ethics and moral resources.
The bureaucratic procedures of handling documents has encouraged leakages.
To shorten the administrative circuits, as much as the circuit is very long, it is making the risk of spreading out the secret documents.
According to these information and communication scientists, publishing of unauthorized information is a global problem that developing countries will need to work very hard to overcome.
The second edition of the ICT Innovation Week in Cameroon will hold from the 24th to the 28th of August 2020 under the auspices of the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications. The information was made public in Yaoundé today by the Minister Minette Libom Lilinkeng, who also disclosed that 15 prizes will be up for grabs including a special prize from the President of the Republic. Let's listen to the minister's declaration in this excerpt selected for us by Yoti Kaleli Sanga.
The theme of this year's event, Young Cameroonians, amidst the challenges of ICT innovation in the context of health crisis, is mainly motivated by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, which has been causing untold damage and desolation across the world for several months now. The second edition of ICT Innovation Week, therefore, appears as an invaluable opportunity to stimulate the ingenuity of our youth.
The 2020 edition of the Certificat d'Aptitude Professionnelle, the CAP, is underway across the national territory. About 300 candidates from in the subsectors were taking the exam at the Government Bilingual Technical and Commercial College in Sam here in Yaoundé. Meantime, their counterparts of the Brevet Professionnel Industriel et Commercial equally started the written session today. Gerald Nanje Yambe has the highlights of today's sessions of the examinations.
After going through the necessary checks, students of CAP STT were calmly seated in the classrooms, waiting to put to paper 4 years of study.
I have confidence in myself. I know that I can do it. It's just the same as a class exam. I didn't stress myself. I feel safe because I have disinfect and I know I will do it.
We are having 310 candidates with 12 candidates in home economics, English section. This first day we are having étude de texte, correction orthographique, French and mathematics.
The 2020 session of the CAP STT will run for 5 days, an exam which will catapult them to upper secondary education. Meantime, at the Government Bilingual Technical High School Yaoundé, 26 candidates of the brevet answered present for commercial examination.
Verification of temperature, the washing hands, the wearing of face mask, and the measures that have been taken this year particularly is that to avoid contamination.
Seti Jean Alega Messi is hosting 22 industrial examination candidates in sewing. The examination started hitch-free and in respect of barrier measures against COVID-19.
Still in the French subsystem of education, the first cycle of the bilingual purpose examination started hitch-free today in the different writing centers in the nation's capital. Victor Siga got the reactions of some candidates and put them together in the following report.
It is in a serene atmosphere that 57 candidates turn out on time for the first paper of the day, oral communication, at the Government Bilingual High School in Tukebe.
I'm stressed a bit because this is my first time to do oral communication.
I am really prepared to confront the first day of the BPC exam.
The enthusiasm of candidates meets with good hygiene and security measures.
Classrooms were all disinfected and they were clean. And the students, there was control this morning. They came in with transparent plastic to see their writing materials. They are not used thermoflash to control all of them.
At the Government Bilingual Practicing High School, it was the same atmosphere. 39 candidates are allowed into the examination hall, only with the essentials.
Students are not allowed to enter the examination room with their bags, except their pen, pencil, eraser, and maybe calculators.
In all, 96 candidates sat in the 2 centers.
The wearing of face masks in public places will be mandatory until further notice.
And you are on the 7:30 news on the Cameroon Radio Television, the CRTV, broadcasting from Yaoundé. The Minister of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, Mununa Futsu, today granted audience to a delegation of officials from the United Nations Secretariat on Global Conversation and the National Youth Council. Discussions focused on a UN Vision campaign partnering, particularly with the youth ahead of the United Nations General Assembly on Youths. Here is an excerpt of the representative of the UN Secretariat on Global Conversation, Siti Batul, after today's audience.
This year we are celebrating the 75th anniversary, and we will have to have this global conversation continuing to show to the UN what is the vision and the perception of the community we are serving for the next years from here to 2045, when we are going to celebrate the century of the UN.
The incident that led to the death of a gendarme officer in Douala last week has raised questions on whether public toilets should be paid for or should be free of charge, especially at travel agencies. Lyris Nane Pote of our bureau in Douala has, since the unfortunate incident, been investigating on the rules and regulations that govern the setting up of public toilets in Cameroon and compiles our findings in this report.
Public toilets, as they are being called, are not free for public use, as one has to pay as little as 100 CFA francs to answer to nature's call, especially in places such as food and drinking joints.
With us with toilet here is that when you pay your ticket with VIP, you are free to go to the toilet, no charges. When the toilet is dirty, the person that is in charge there usually asks for okay.
A pressing need that can quickly become a bone of contention. But what does one have to know of what these public toilets are? Sterling MENO, a practicing lawyer, clarifies that the name public toilet does not mean it is free to the public, and users should be able to know the differences. In a context of marketing, an institution can provide such services but cannot provide it for free. This is at the discretion of the institution, he says. Most of these toilets are mostly constructed by the city council and others for business purposes, wherein they provide users with tissues, soap, and a wash hand point to maintain their hygiene. But users still do not see the need to pay for the services. Whether a paid or free service, it is advisable a user be certain on what kind of public toilet they are about to use, so as to avoid any embarrassment or misunderstanding.
The Ministry of Public Health announced recently it will be introducing a vaccine against the cancer of the cervix and other diseases caused by the human papillomavirus into the expanded program on immunization. The vaccination campaign due for September 3 in schools and households targets close to 350,000 girls aged at least 9 years in the national territory. This news has triggered fears amongst parents, many of whom questioned the wisdom of having their children vaccinated at a time when opposition to a potential coronavirus vaccine test is being fueled across the globe. But then the question that arises is there a scare? Is the scare for the vaccine founded? And that question I put to you, Beatrice Losamba, as you handle our slot talk of the day.
Amidst opposition fueled against the coronavirus vaccine test globally, some parents are losing sleep over the announcement of the government's vaccination campaign against cervix cancer and infections caused by the most common sexually transmitted virus.
I don't want it given to my child. They have to sensitize so we get acquainted to the product.
Experts say fear is the wrong move. Giving as example some 22,000 girls who have voluntarily taken the vaccine in the country and are in good health.
They should not be scared of the vaccine because the vaccine is safe. We are not the only country who introduced that vaccine.
Health sources say the decision to introduce the vaccine among free vaccines in the country was naturally taken long before the emergence of the coronavirus.
We strongly recommend the parents to accept the vaccine because the cervical cancer is really a burden in our country. 2,000 new cases every year, at least 2,000 dead.
The experts say they will not browbeat patients into vaccinating, but make sure they have accurate information to make informed decisions. Instead of spending over 66,000 CFA francs each for the vaccine, come September 23, over 350,000 teenage girls will be given a chance to get the 2-dose vaccine free of charge.
A COVID-19 vast mobile testing operation goes underway tomorrow, Tuesday, in Cameroon. The operation, which will take the testing teams to neighborhoods and market squares, will be launched in Yaoundé by the Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malache. Let's go over to Baldwin Sama at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center, who, together with his guest, Dr. Blaise Akenje, tells us how the mobile testing operations is going to be done. Hello, Baldwin. Come on board with your guest.
Good evening to you, Benn, MENO, PUFONG. It has become very difficult for many persons to get tested for COVID-19, given that more and more Cameroonians have been very reluctant to have themselves screened as far as COVID-19 is concerned, and that is why the Ministry of Public Health has come up with this new strategy, call it mobile testing, that will be launched this Tuesday in Yaoundé, that will see health officials comb the different neighborhoods of the nation's capital city, especially places where we have a high concentration of persons such as university campuses, travel agencies, and equally places where in churches where you have more of these persons. And that is what we shall be discussing tonight with our guest, Dr. Blaise Akenje, who is a clinical biologist. Good evening, doctor.
Good evening, Baldwin.
When we talk about mobile testing that will be launched this Tuesday in Yaoundé, what is it all about?
Okay, I think you've summarized it quite easily put. Mobile testing will entail a strategy where we create easily displaceable teams of health personnel. These health personnel actually together will be able to sensitize the population, do counseling, collect samples on the spot, and also test immediately. Then these things are disadvantageous because what we have right now is what we're testing at fixed posts, which means that for someone to get tested, they may have to travel long distances to get a COVID-19 test, which reduces the access to this to testing. With this new strategy, what we're doing is, like you have said, we're sending these teams down into the communities, which means you're bringing the testing close to the communities. It makes it easier for them to get tested. Also, what is notable is that with the current testing methods we have now, testing strategy, we have issues with turnaround time. By turnaround time, I mean the time from sample collection to patients having their results is usually long. With this strategy we're putting in place, we're aiming at a maximum of 3 days, that's 72 hours. So within time of sample collection and availability of results, we are hoping a maximum of 72 hours, so which will help us to easily identify and track these patients and give them treatment and break the chain of transmission. That is the aim.
Finally, very briefly, for those who will be very reluctant, how are you going to convince them to go in for testing?
I think to convince someone to get tested means you have to give them the right information on what is at hand. What we have done so far is we have employed town criers. We're using the media and other sources, even social media, to sensitize people. Our aim is to sensitize. I think we sensitize correctly, it will convince people that they actually need to get tested and know the status in order to protect themselves and their loved ones.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blaise Akenje. Remind our viewers that you're a clinical biologist, and Operation Mobile Testing will be launched this Tuesday in Yaoundé. It will take place in the nation's capital city for 1 month, and Cameroonians are called upon to adhere to mobile testing, get yourself screened for COVID-19. Back to you, Benn, MENO, PUFONG.
Thank you very much, Baldwin Sama, for those updates, and equally thanks to your guest. And on to other news now. The games and entertainment company Camprez joins the national fight against the spread of COVID-19 as it commits to distributing some 120,000 face masks across the national territory. The first phase of the exercise took place over the weekend in the Mfundi division of the Central region, where 20,000 face masks were distributed to bike riders. Maimuna Njoya reports from CRTV Center.
Motorbike riders in Yaoundé are visibly amongst inhabitants who are no longer strictly respecting the constant wearing of face masks. Given that this fraction of the population are potential carriers of the coronavirus as they transport a wide range of people, Campress, through its Super Goal Proximity Plan of Action, has resolved to offer 20,000 face masks. The company's stopover at the Yaoundé 5 Divisional Office was highly acclaimed by the targeted people.
I'm very happy. I'm very glad. We say thank you for Super Goal for this initiative.
The administrative authority of this part of the Fundi Division acknowledged that this initiative is timely, especially now that people are more and more lax with regards to the barrier measures against COVID-19.
I am very satisfied. I am thanking our partners, Super Goal. They are helping the government in the fight against coronavirus. So we can just encourage them to go forward.
A total number of 120,000 face coverings are to be distributed across the national territory, and the donors have a principal call.
My advice to them is to use the cash net they give them in a good way, because you know, sometimes when you give something like that, they just put it in the pocket. We hope that they will use it.
Despite consistent measures by government to check the spread of the coronavirus, motorbike riders, like every other persons, are expected to relentlessly and appropriately wear their face masks.
We equally have this release published after the board meeting of the Port Authority of Douala. And it reads, the Board of Directors of the Port Authority of Douala, the PAD, held its 91st session in Yaoundé on Monday, the 27th of July 2020, under the chairmanship of Mr. Shey Jones Yembe, chairman of the board. Mr. Ngo Chris Cyrus, General Manager of the Port Authority of Douala, reported on the matters of the agenda. He was assisted by Mr. Mukoko Njo Charles Michaud, Deputy General Manager. During the said session, the essential point was the assessment report of the first 6 months of the activities of the container terminal management of the Port of Douala, Bonaberi, presented by the General Manager of the Port Authority of Douala. In essence, it emerged that despite the difficult context which characterized the resumption of operations of the container terminal on January 1, 2020, the container terminal management fulfilled its mission by providing users of the said terminal with quality services in compliance with the performance and result objectives set for it. Also, taking note of the management constraints faced by the container terminal management and drawing lessons from these 6 months of operations of the terminal, and in accordance with government guidelines, the Board of Directors decided to reorganize the container terminal management to extend its duration by 3 years, renewable, starting January 1, 2021. The Board of Directors assured the General Manager of the Port Authority of Douala of its full support in the accomplishment of his mission, congratulated him for the results already achieved, and encouraged him to maintain the course of standardization of port activities and physical transformation of the Douala Bonaberi port container. And it is signed Shey Jones Yembe, Chairman of the board. The 7:30 News tonight opens a series on musical programming by animators on radio stations across Cameroon. This series opens on the reasons that inform the choice of music on radio programs. The trend generally goes for foreign music at the detriment of locally composed music. Romeo Nkenye accosted some of these animators, with whom he now explains why they go for foreign and not home brand music.
He animates like this on daily basis on radio. His playlist is predominantly foreign. According to veteran radio animator Billy Shaw, who spent 40 years in the business, many factors account for this.
In our system, you play first, you sign a contract with the producer, and you wait till they play you on radio, and you have a sort of proof that have diffused your music. You take that proof, you go to Copyright Corporation, then they pay you.
Nigerian and Congolese melodies are listeners' favorite. Cameroon music suffers from this. Competition has set in.
Cameroonians musicians do not play quality music. Most of the time, we play what has been paid. Most of our proprietors feel that they use their media to promote our own local musicians, and when they reach a stage where they have now to pay regularly, they abandon them.
Although after acknowledging that artists have to step up their production in quality and quantity, animators believe it is high time government enacts a law governing the sector.
The 7:30 news on the CRTV. That's the way it was. Thanks for watching. Good night.
In this connection, we should avoid stigmatizing.
CRTV News, toute l'info.